Welcome, friends. It's very nice to have you with us tonight on a Sunday evening. This is the third month of our speaker series, and we are very excited for the panel that is here with us tonight. Again, this is being recorded, so if you're with us right now, that's great. We look forward to hearing from you in the chat. But we also are excited that this will live on NAIA.org, and that way you or any of your staff can access it and refer back to it whenever you want. So the speaker series is something new that we're trying this year. And the way it works is the first Sunday of the month, there's some topic that is usually facing administrators, coaches, athletic trainers. The second Sunday of the month is a topic that faces student athletes. So, so far we've talked about mental health, we've talked about building facilities, and tonight, this is really exciting. We have our friends from the U.S. Council for Athletes Health, USCA, one of our best official partners, to come here and host a roundtable that looks more at the recovery and the workout space for student athletes. So we've looked at the mental health side. Let's look at the weight room side, the recovery side, the AT side of the student athlete experience. Great job last time of hosting and being our moderator. We are very lucky to have Bob Sweeney with us again from USCA. I'm going to share with you all some information right now. And this is, we're going to come back to this, but for now, we want you to take a brief look at our guests, and Bob is going to do the introductions. Friends, I'm going to keep an eye on the chat. Feel free to put your thoughts whenever you want. Make sure you share it to everyone. That way we can see it. And when it comes to the end of the evening, we will look back at the chat and see if there's any input. We'll also look for any kind of pressing issue that needs to be addressed right away if you bring it up. Okay? So again, here are our presenters. And Bob, please feel free.
Thanks, Robert, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this important topic. Tonight, we'll be discussing performance and recovery updates, utilization of best practices and technology. So some things that are out there, both commercially and in the app or web technology space that can help you with your student athletes to help them keep them healthy and performing at their best. My name is Bob Sweeney. I'm an athletic trainer and I am Vice President of the U.S. Council for Athletes Health. And we are the official health and safety partner for the NAIA. Joining us on the panel this evening is another athletic trainer, Brian Appling. Brian is from Henry Schein, another NAIA partner in the medical and sports medicine sales space. Brian is their regional sales manager and has been with them for about 12 years. Whitney Rodden joins us from the Collegiate Strength and Conditioning Coaches Association. Whitney is also the head strength and conditioning coach at Mid-American Nazarene University. And finally, kicking it off for us, again from USCA, is one of our senior directors, Alex Wong. Alex is also an athletic trainer and has had stops at Northwestern Michigan and Ohio State and is in his first year with us at USCA. So without any further ado, I do want one housekeeping item. Robert, at the end of this, is going to send out a survey and then also a certificate. So for athletic trainers, we are approved by the BOC to grant 1 to 1.5, depending on how long we go, units for this evening's activity. And for the strength and conditioning professionals on the course, you can use that certificate to claim credit from your governing body as well. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Alex. And again, thanks. And we look forward to spending the evening with you tonight.
Great. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Look forward to this presentation. So as we get going here today with the performance and recovery updates, and hopefully some of this other information will be helpful for everybody on the call. I know that we do have a varied audience between administrators, coaches, and then those also in the medical and performance space. So hopefully some of this information allows you to maybe continue some conversations that you have tried to have previously with administration, whether it be relating to the student athlete health and welfare, in addition to also maybe some budgetary like issues and the timing of asking for some of these requests as we get going. So a little bit more specifically, did want to talk about some items in the space of recovery. And a lot of these things are nice because they should enable the student athlete to manage some of this recovery on their own. Obviously want to be mindful and cognizant of clinician time demands, both on, in the athletic training and also in the strength and conditioning and performance space as well. So as we look at that, some, familiar names in that sequential compression, recovery space of Normatec, recovery pump, and then there's some others. I think when you look at those and that pneumatic sequential compression, you have a lot of different options and a lot of different bundles. And I think that's where it's an incredible opportunity to pair with Henry Schein. And, Brian will speak a little bit later too, but, being creative with how you package some of these recovery items, et cetera. And then recovery pump's another one too. And I believe recovery pump sits in a nice space too, where you can actually do single leg, recovery as well. And you don't necessarily always have to have, 2 legs going. So even from an injury recovery standpoint, that's always a great thing. And then in compression garments, I think this is a space where it's a known item, again, been around for quite a while, a lot of different vendors. I think it's also nice to be educated and know about, kind of that gradient pressure and what are you looking for. So things that are under, you'll see the mmHg. So, that some of the readings end up looking like your blood pressure, but it is. So under 20 falls in that low compression rating, and then medium 20 to 30, and then high would be over 30. And so you'll see also recovery, and then sometimes you'll often hear items referred to as like medical grade. And so you'll see or hear, post-operative, you'll see like joke stockings post a foot, intervention, or things that even go up to the thigh. But those compression garments really sit in a nice space to maximize passive recovery with athletes, while they're either at home, traveling back on a bus, et cetera. And so again, maximizing some of that downtime as far as that goes. And then the oscillation, trigger, point, and vibration therapies, again, a tremendous space. Probably maybe one of the more prominent you'll see is, like the hyper ice line of everything, between foam rollers, massage guns, the balls that, a lot of times you're always trying to repurpose things, get a bunch of old lacrosse balls donated to you and try and use those, or you can, a lot of times tape 2 together and you have some good spinal segment, mobilization and trigger point. But, in that space, there is, a number of articles, literature on, does the vibration therapy help with some recovery and pain management, and really trying to get these student athletes more comfortable a little bit quicker and help facilitate some turnaround on competitions. And in that instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization space with Graston, hot grips, et cetera. And now there's obviously those are can be very costly, especially when you look at acquiring a full set. So again, Brian may be able to speak to, they have some great just singular multi-tools, right? So the edge on multiple edges on a single tool can really treat a ton of different conditions, which is great too. And then cupping, this is one, again, been around for so long. And, I think over these last few Olympic cycles with everyone seeing the swimmers, right, with like all the cupping, circles like all over the back, as long as a lot of other athletes. But this has always been such a great modality in the sense of there's so many things we do that are compressive on tissue, massage, foam rolling, even the Normatec, a lot of things are just always compressing and squeezing on tissue. And so you get a really nice opportunity to actually decompress and lift tissue, with cupping and whatnot. And so again, a ton of options with those. And so that should be able to, sneak back, achieve just a different modality. So, and then also as we look at like on that tech space, so the mental health mindfulness apps, I've always just found it helpful. It's pretty intuitive, but just to search meditation and mindfulness. Specifically for us, actually in the USCA space is athletics health space modules. And so we do have an app of which you can end up getting different modules. And I think that offers a nice solution, as do all of these, when you can, download and go and have a nice education sit down. But even on the pre-call, us as panelists were just discussing how so many of the administrative duties as assigned continue to grow on all individuals. And so what are some great ways to message, but the same messaging? And I think that that comes through and, possibly some of these modules where you can push out a singular message or education session to a large group of people. And then at least from that standpoint, that everyone's speaking the same language on a given issue. Another great, apps for kind of that mindfulness, Calm, Insight Timer, and Headspace. And I think the beauty with a lot of these is I believe at a minimum, most of them have at least a 7-day kind of free trial or a minimum. So you're not locked in. You can definitely try like a number of these out and go through there. Then from the nutrition area too, obviously a ton, but these are just two that are pretty popular and somewhat present or on the forefront. MyFitnessPal, which has been around for so long, but it's very nice from the standpoint too, these apps continue to grow where you can even just scan the barcodes. And so you don't even really have to go through and dive in and do as much data entry on your own. They've done a nice job of trying to streamline that process. And then Nutrients is another one. Although it's not free, I want to say it's maybe $4.99, so on the cheaper side. But it provides a tremendous amount of knowledge on the nutrient density in foods and whatnot. And so as you're trying to have conversations and educate individuals and assist them in making smarter choices or getting more kind of bang for their buck out of making a food or dietary choice, you can maybe help direct them to things that are a little bit more nutrient dense and maybe make a little bit more sense from that standpoint. And then from an electronics, and the glasses there to things to aid in sleep. I think a lot of us take for granted the effects of having, like the traditional screen on and up and, or, just falling, trying to fall asleep or already being wired after a game. But nowadays, most phones and I think most computers have the ability to set it automatically with that night shift, of which it's just changing the lighting in the background, or you'll see it, flip the screen so it'll have a much darker appearance in order to help not disrupt your circadian rhythms as you start to move into the night after, post game, if you're trying to watch film, watching a movie, winding down late night. And then the glasses, that's more specifically on that blue light blocking, which have been some proposed benefits to, not inhibiting your normal traditional sleep patterns. The other pair that'll come up sometimes are the amber or orange, but those more times than not actually end up distorting your screen. And so people have been less, when you wear them, have been less compliant wearing those versus the blue light blocking. So kind of a very quick but broad overview on a number of items in that space. But again, I think it's a good starting point, some great things to consider. And I think hopefully, again, as you look at these, and hopefully if you have the ability to currently utilize these or are considering them, definitely between all the panelists here, if we could help ultimately in you trying to get a proposal together or putting together some additional information, we certainly want to do so. And from here, I will transition over to Whitney, who will talk about some of that active recovery in the performance space.
All right. Thank you, Alex. Oh, yeah. Okay. So some of the things I feel like are important to look at, not only in some of the things that Alex mentioned, but also looking at, in the weight room space. And that's, where I come in as far as to hopefully help with the athletic training staff to maybe, guide some of our athletes through that process so they don't have to always go to the training room, but they can take advantage of some of our, foam rolling, lacrosse balls, and also just looking at the overall training throughout the season, having a plan for having maybe certain days or certain weeks, depending on how the game schedule is going to be, so that you can incorporate some of those recovery days or recovery methods within the training. And a lot of times here recently, the last few years, I've taken some of our workouts and we will do mobilization in between our sets. So it's great for not only working on their mobilization, but also is just an active recovery and keeping them healthy and being able to maybe move better, you know, a little bit more. So they've warmed up, you know, a lot of times we do our pre-training prep. So they're doing some mobility things beforehand, but they may still be a little bit stiff. We do our warm up and then we get into our training. And then in between our sets of training, we'll do, you know, stretching our wrist or stretching lats, doing something where it's going to help within whatever exercise that we're doing, so that it can continue so they can move better throughout their exercises and then go on and hopefully that maintains throughout the rest of the day and just continues to compound over the weeks of their training. As far as like, you know, there may be times where I have a plan set up for the athletes, but, you know, I'll talk to the coach, talk to some upperclassmen and make a decision on maybe we do need to back off in, you know, whatever week, if things have just been kind of hitting the wall and they're just still struggling. So sometimes it's much better even for their mind, more so than their body, that they've kind of just come in, had a chance to take a break and work on that recovery process. So they're not feeling like they're always on the go. I feel like that's kind of the area where I can come in and try to give them a little bit of a break from all their hard training. So Alex, do you mind switching to the next slide for me, please? I decided to share a sample workout of a recovery workout. I've been doing this, especially with some of our more distance type athletes. So a lot of our cross country athletes, they may have really long runs and they'll just need to, you know, be able to just kind of touch on a few things, just some core, but really hammer some of their mobility things. So some of the shoulder flossing we do, they're stretching their pecs, their tricep, upper back, lats, and then they thread that arm through and do a little extra shoulder, you know, just digging in a little bit more into that shoulder. And then doing their TRX pull-ups. And then our butter turner abs are just we do a lot of band work. So I think that's also helpful. They're not just always doing heavy loads. They can get some band work in, whether that's through some core work or touching on the hips. We'll do a little mini band series to help activate their glutes. And I will say, we've gotten a couple of our coaches on board with getting their own bands, and they do mini band hip work before they even start their practices. So I think that's been awesome that they bought into that. And then I don't have to do it quite as much. I may still do it some, but it's been great to see that they're taking that initiative to go ahead and do those things. And or some may have bought foam rollers and they travel with their foam rollers too. So I think it's another great thing that they've bought into. So anyways, back to the sample workout. We do butter turner abs, so it's just band, working on core stability. The world's greatest stretch. It's just kind of a nice back and glute and groin opener. And I think it's, again, they're warm, they're loosening up a little bit more, and then working on balance. So we'll do a single leg Bosu ball balance and then work on their piriformis stretching on a box. So I know they really bought into that and love it, and then finish up with some extra band work. So I don't know, I just thought I'd add some of the workouts just to give an example of kind of some of the things that we do. Just, I don't know, because I think I love seeing what people are doing. Okay, do you mind? I think I have one more slide. And then another thing, and kind of piggyback on what Alex had said too, just making sure that they're staying hydrated, getting good nutrition. And, you know, there's been times where I'll ask, you know, they look like they're struggling in their workout, and, you know, I'll ask them what they've had to eat and they haven't had anything, or maybe a bag of chips. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So we try to give them some specific things, you know, there is, you know, food in the calf that they could go and get, but making sure they're staying with lean meats, grilled chicken, eggs, you know, steak, any kind of meat. There's steamed veggies, sweet potatoes, salad, try to stay off of the heavy salad dressings. Avocados have good fats. It's going to help a lot with their recovery. then oatmeal, nuts, peanut butter, anything, and fruit, just anything they can take with them is going to be so important. We encourage them to take snacks with them throughout the day. If they don't have any time at all to go get their lunch or breakfast or anything, just to take some snacks with them and keep them going, and so they can focus in class too. So sometimes they struggle a little bit, but encouraging them to take water with them, make sure they're getting at least 1 ounce of water per half of their body weight, at least as a minimum. I know with some athletes that are going to be out in the heat, they're going to need more, obviously, and trying to avoid the sugar loaded drinks. So it won't upset their stomach and help keep them going. So that's all I have. I know our athletes sometimes are great about these recovery methods, and that's why and some that aren't so good at it, that's why I've started incorporating some of the recovery in between our workouts, because some just won't do it on their own. So, when you make them do it, then they'll then at least get something out of it. So anyways, back to, I think Brian is going to be next, I believe.
Thanks, Whitney. Hey, Brian, if you could just, as you're getting started here, we've talked about some, obviously some pretty cost-effective things, both from a, technology standpoint and a lot of the things that Whitney discussed are readily found in, in weight rooms and in athletic training rooms. From your experience, just in what you're seeing, now on the market, and I'm sure you're going to hit a little bit of this, but to start us out, can you just kind of, if there was one thing, and budgets are tight everywhere, but if there was one thing that you're seeing is really, going out the door in this recovery space, what would you say that would be?
Thanks, Bob. I would say that there's two general areas of equipment that are on the uptrend. The vibration massager, like the Theragun or the Hyperice, and then the Normatec recovery pump. Those are probably the two that I've seen move more rapidly recently. The pricing on those things compared to when they came out 5-6 years ago or whatever has dropped dramatically. Much more affordable now. You can get a leg unit for Normatec, just the legs, I believe it's under $900 now, and it started out at like $2,000. So that's huge. The Theraguns and the Hyperice units are still about the same. Theragun's a little more expensive. Has a few more options to it. The top line models fixed at about $600 roughly, and it's a little less actually. And then the Hyperice is down about $350 or less. And there's a whole series of different options there. And part of what I look at, I guess, as an athletic trainer is you have those tools that you use in the clinic on a regular basis. And then you have those tools that are more compact that you travel with. And I think it's important that you look at, all the gear that we travel with, because we want to be, as athletic trainers, we want to be prepared for everything, right? But really, a lot of times we find ourselves in an overkill process, and you can consolidate and compact that down and make that more efficient. But I think the other part of that, and Whitney sort of led to this a little bit, is that the athlete themselves has a little recovery kit where they have their foam roller and they may have a stick for those for just massaging out, and so on, that allows for you as a team, whether you're the athletic trainer, the strength coach, or the coach that's assigned to strength, you're not having to carry all that stuff. Let's see what else we're going to talk about. So we've got a whole series of different things in the clinical, back at home in the clinical area. You've got the lasers, cold and hot, are excellent for recovery. There's electrical devices like the BioWave, and Normatec just came out with what they call the ICT piece. Pretty inexpensive piece of equipment, between $50 and $115 usually, that is real specific to body parts. Again, we've all talked about rollers. There's vibration rollers on top of just your normal rollers. That maybe that specialty piece that the athletic trainer carries on the road has for more difficult challenges back in the athletic training facility. We talked a little bit about cupping sets. There are so many different. There's such a variety of cupping sets. You can get cupping set for, you can go to Amazon and buy a cupping set for like $20. And not sure it's going to last you a long time, but cupping sets can be complex. The more expensive ones, the glass models that have like 18 cups, you can spend up to about $180 on those. So again, it sort of depends on your situation and what you think that works. Hot Grips makes a silicone cupping set that has like 7 cups to it to decompress, and it doesn't take anything special and doesn't take any space, so it's easy to travel with. So those are some options there with that. We talked a little about scraping tools, the Graston, the Hot Grips. There's another scraping tool, FMST. It actually has 2 tools, and it's like $400. So most single-use metal scrapers are somewhere in the neighborhood of $350 to $400 a tool. And now they're making, again, to go to the travel piece, they're making a tool that has multiple edges, that is compact. It's one tool, so work perfect on the road. And as I tell our colleagues, our athletic training colleagues across my region, it's not like you're going to be having someone that's on the injured reserve list that's traveling with the team that you're going to be doing extensive rehab on the road. It's going to be those minor recovery things that you're going to be dealing with, or preparation things that you're going to be dealing with on the road before the event. And a single tool with multiple edges is easier to carry than, a set of 9 tools, so you have a tool for everything that you could possibly come across. Again, sometimes as athletic trainers, we want to be prepared for everything, and we take too much with us and make it harder on ourselves than I think we really have to. So in the general terms, when anything is new that comes out, it's always more expensive. As it exists longer in the marketplace, and there are more and more companies that are making a particular type of tool, you will find that costs decrease. And now recovery tools are much more affordable than they used to be, and as it relates to, to sort of backtrack a little bit on the sequential compression type units. I mean, you don't have to have an athletic training table for recovery. You can get a recovery lounge chair for just over $100. That's going to suffice for every single one of your athletes. So you could create a room at school for your needs that would be able to do that sequential compression activity for basically, a little over $100 for the chair, and then whatever recovery sequential compression unit that you want. So, the other thing too, let me add to that. So Alex mentioned sort of the unileg versus the bilateral piece. All units now can be used unilaterally. So even though the Normatec comes with a bifurcated hose, there's a plug that you can plug one side and just do a single. And it comes with each unit. So that makes that a relatively simple process, so that you don't have to do both legs if you've got one leg you want to rehab on. But there's more detail to that. We could go into a lot more detail. But for what we're doing here tonight, that should be enough detail to at least create the curiosity to then follow up and have those questions asked. So any questions of anybody on any of those things, or anything that I or we did not address as it comes to recovery equipment that may be available or that you're interested in?
Bob, in the chat there, I received a private question from one of our friends in the audience, and they asked if I would follow up and ask it here. So here we go. Whitney, you had mentioned that the coaches, the sport coaches on your campus, had bought in and started using bands as part of their regular practice. How did you get that buy-in? How are the bands team specific? Are they yours? Do they belong to the teams? How did you get that kind of buy-in? Were the students behind it? So if you could, and maybe go a little further and talk about that very, very important relationship between the strength coach, the sport coach, the athletic training staff, and trying to get on the same page, even though everyone has their own directives and priorities, even though the main thing that keeps us all in this business is the student athlete.
Yeah, I've been using our mini bands for last few years. And, honestly, I've talked to our sport coaches about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I was honestly kind of surprised. They just kind of took it upon themselves. I think they're pretty good about doing the research on, well, why are we doing this? And so they probably expanded on it a little bit more. And as far as the communication between sport coaches, athletic trainers, and myself, I feel like we've all worked together really pretty well. And, I think they just kind of saw taking some of that pre-training type stuff into their hands in a way that also not only helped if it helped us for the weight room, then they saw the benefit of it helping them before practice. So saw how it would make a difference in their activation. So they're, loosening up, they're warming up while activating at the same time, and getting a little stronger throughout their warm up as well. So it's just more of just, preventative in their, injuries, since they're not with me all the time, but they're practicing every day. It's just, they saw the benefit to taking that on themselves and being able to do it beforehand. So that's, hopefully I answered enough.
Whitney, I have a question. I'm going to pose this question to you, and then I want Alex to chime in as well. When we think of recovery, obviously a big portion of this, especially when we're thinking in season, is rest. But I want to, in a perfect scenario, I want you to talk about like days off. So days off during the season, whether it's the day after competition or, some teams do something the day after competition and maybe take Monday off for a Saturday competition. But talk about days off and your philosophy on that, and what you like to have the student athletes doing on what's considered a day off from their sport, but maybe not a day off from the weight room or the athletic training room. But just kind of, talk about off days, please.
Okay. Well, for us, it's different for each team. It's different because, we've got football. So football, is having their games on Saturdays. They'll sometimes do recovery on Sunday on their own. And then on Monday, they're off from practice, but they're in with me. And so typically Mondays are going to be more of our heavier lifting day, even though it's off from practice. I'm going to push them a little bit more on that day. And then on Wednesday is our next day that they're lifting. We'll go a little bit lighter, but, still work on, moving well, working on mobility a little bit more. We'll do a little bit more heavier upper body, whereas Monday we're going heavier on legs. So then they can play, kind of give their legs a little break going into their game on Saturday. Most of the other sports that are having competitions every, couple days, we'll try to still have a heavier lift, typically the day after, and a lighter lift if they have the game, the next day or two. So it's typically how I try to kind of manage those days off. And a lot of times, the coaches usually are pretty good about communicating with me about, okay, we really pushed them hard in practice this week. Can you back off a little bit or go, upper body, go push them on their upper body and work on mobility more so on lower body. So we can kind of mesh that together and prepare them and try to keep the injuries at bay as long as possible for hopefully the whole time. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. Alex, what about day off, quote unquote, in the athletic training room?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, to what Whitney had said, a lot of it comes down to communication, especially just from all parties. And a lot of times it's even just making sure like academics, is involved in all those other areas, because coaches may want them in for something additional or they may have an extensive rehab. But if they are not doing well in a couple classes and they, study hall or something else would be better, right? Then you need to figure out how to navigate and intertwine that into their day as well. But I would agree. I think a lot more of the, you might hear like the prehab and that preventative. And so I think everyone's used to, and everyone in that collegiate athletic space, regardless of level, is extremely competitive. And so if they're injured and out and not competing, more times than not, it's not hard to get them in to manage that. But it's the individuals that are maybe trying to continue participating at such a high level. And so I think some things that we've done are, and obviously certain institutions will be resourced differently. Not everyone is to HydroWorks pools, and people are just in there doing pool recovery, et cetera. However, if there is aquatics, we've worked on, even at some larger institutions I've been at where we didn't have a great deep well access for a run, there is open swim, or open pool times, at the pools on campus. And it's not so much from a standpoint of, here's your pool workout, and now you have to make sure. It's just sometimes getting in the water and moving and being unloaded, and just doing that active recovery and like that flushing out feels great just in general. Another one is the same thing, maybe there's only one or two bikes or airdynes between the weight room or the athletic training room, more from a conditioning or a rehab. So again, it's that rec center. And sometimes I think a lot of times it's good mental health for the student athletes to not necessarily be under the purview, right, or the watchful eyes at times of all the other staff or people that are around, because then they can get, caught or have discussions. I think sometimes you get more buy-in when you've encouraged them to do it elsewhere. And then sometimes they do it because it can be a little bit more around like their time and they might enjoy it a little bit more, or, some of maybe their non-teammate friends, right, can join them. So I think utilizing those resources. And another big one too is, and sometimes you might be surprised if you did a general call out within your athletic departments of who has some of these additional certifications or who has a passion in a certain area. Like we've actually found a couple staff members, previous places were working like on their Pilates certificate and other things, right? And next thing you know, now you have some internal staff members that are running some informal courses, right? And so it's not so much always this, you have to pay, yet another expert to come in or a massage therapist. I mean, that stuff adds up very quickly, and especially if you're trying to do a large group. So that's been the other thing too, is getting individuals out and, yoga sessions again, right? Like utilizing some of their student resources, whether it be in the community or whatnot. I do think, and again, coming back to that communication piece is, them feeling comfortable letting know their, performance coach, athletic trainer, and their coach, like kind of what some of their plans are, because as schedules change, which they will, but that early and often communication, if possible, is only going to benefit them. So to Whitney's example, if an off day changes on a fly, she may have had a stacked workout of a progression, but now, as an off day changes or some different things change, that has a pretty big impact. And maybe some certain muscle groups might be more sore than you would want them, day before a game or a couple days before a game, or anything lower extremity. We're obviously very cognizant of, because you don't want, fatigued legs and to create an injurious, condition or setting, because someone maybe didn't have time to recover due to a sudden schedule change, et cetera. So I think those have been some good solutions, like in the community or on campus. But yeah, I think a recovery day in the athletic training room, certainly, sometimes it's, you can have the idea of, maybe student athletes are just laying on the tables, or they're just, it kind of gets the, oh gosh, here they go, they're hanging out again, what are they doing? Or, it turns into, a venting session or a ranting session. And we certainly want to make it a place where comfortable for open communication, but also, a medical facility and a healthcare facility. And so if you're coming in, let's do it for a purpose. And that purpose can very much so be for recovery, but it needs to be intentional, and multiple people need to be involved in it.
Great. Thanks, Alex. At this time, that's really all we have. We're happy to stay on and answer any questions that any of the attendees have. And I can also kick it back to Robert for any wrap up housekeeping items.
Thank you very much, Bob, and thank you to the panel. I might try to grab the screen here just for a second and open this back up. If you'll pause with me just one moment. We're going to put the contact information back up for everybody. Whitney, that a thumbs up? You see it okay? All right. So again, remember these Sunday evening conversations, the speaker series, it's not necessarily supposed to provide anyone with closure on a topic. It's the beginning of a conversation. And we've got some outstanding experts here that are all agreed to take your calls and visit with you deeper about any of these issues. For those of you that are watching now, which is November 7th, when this is over, I'll grab the list of attendees and we will send you a one-pager, which is really nice, a little summary of all the talking points. And we'll also be able to send the certificate for the CEU. For those of you that are watching this after it has been recorded and you grabbed it from NAIA.org and you're watching it with your colleagues, please feel free to reach out directly to me, Robert Grime at the national office, and we can get those materials to you. But boy, this has been so wonderful. And just please keep in mind, whether it's materials or equipment that you need from our partner, Henry Schein, whether it's maybe education that you need from CSCCA, we reach out to Whitney. Or if it's some of these outstanding ideas that you've just heard about how to get the professionals on your campus on the same page. The guidance from USCA is outstanding. Start that conversation, go deeper. We also have some wonderful examples we heard today of getting student athletes involved in their own active recovery with the rec center and what that'll do for campus relationships, using the pool, finding a Pilates instructor, a yoga session. And here's the great thing about that. That doesn't have to be one team at a time. You've just given your student athletes another opportunity to interact with each other away from the supportive, watchful eye of their staff. But it's fun for them, and they're taking care of recovery while they're doing that. So again, wonderful ideas. Thank you to Brian, to Whitney, to Bob, to Alex. Please reach out directly to anyone on this panel or myself, and we will love to continue the conversation. Bob, last word for you, my friend.
No, this has been great. Agree with Robert. Anything that anyone on this call or any of your colleagues needs, please don't hesitate to reach out to anybody. All of our contact information is here. Again, a reminder to the athletic trainers on the call that you can claim credit for this event. We're coming up on a reporting time period here. We've all been getting our emails from the NATA, so be sure to answer Robert's survey and download your certificate, and you'll be able to claim a unit. So we'll probably we can say we went an hour. I don't think they're going to come in. I don't think they're going to come and do anything. So, but appreciate everybody joining tonight. And again, please do not hesitate to let us know if you have questions after the fact. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop recording, but I'm going to stay on for anyone in the audience that wants to just talk for a little while longer. Panel, thank you so much. Great job.